The American comic book industry and just Western entertainment in general has seen better days. You probably watched some of my old videos where I talked about how the core thing that's missing right now in nerd culture pertaining to Western media is fan enthusiasm. Though not exclusively, this especially applies to newer, recently released content. I think it's very important to understand why this isn't the case anymore and why it's so important that it returns. Once upon a time, this was a standard in nerd culture. Even if it was dealing with a story or character that you weren't a fan of, it was still all in fun and the focus was on the characters and their world. Nowadays, the focus is a lot more on who made the characters and what they do in their spare time. And there are contributing factors to this. One, the explosion of social media. Everybody has many computers in their pockets and conversations are a lot more widespread. It's impossible to replicate the anticipation of the old days before everything was so connected. Now these conversations are not had in just these contained nerd spaces. They're all over the internet. Two, which lies into one, is how mainstream some of the nerd culture stuff became. It's the best thing to happen, but in the long term, there are some consequences. It's not to say that people didn't know about superheroes and sci-fi back in the gap. It's that a lot of things have been pushed to the forefront. So this means a lot of non-nerds have placed themselves into these spaces. They brought in those habits and that has completely disrupted the subculture. Now everybody is chasing wide appeal and that has impacted how the more niche things like comics are created. So many went into this trying to chase a Hollywood deal. And third, which you knew I was going here, is the inevitable culture wars. In the mid-2010s, there was this obvious focus on box checking, which led to this pattern recognition. Orange Man becomes president and now everybody loses their minds. Now these creators are pledging allegiance to social causes. They lost their mystique and unfortunately it began to impact their work. So people justifiably began to highlight the individual creators a lot more and their antics. And that's because it was bleeding into the things that they were fans of. There was a lot of denial and a lot of fan attacking. Though some people would like to pretend otherwise, most of my content consisted of reviews in the worlds of comics. Even most of the movie reviews I did were positive and mostly contained to those characters. I would explain why this made sense or why it didn't make sense, the history, but now the general online conversation is about the writer, the artist, or the actor and what they did and why. And I'm not oblivious to that. But if American culture is going to improve, it needs its fans and customers nerding out.
Hello there.
This was something I recognized before I even started my own comic book company. This is way bigger than just me, and we need people engaged enough to talk about the world and its characters. It's less about fans needing to do it and more about this being an indicator on the health of the industry. There's so much talk about the talent or lack thereof of the people creating. Though this may bruise some egos here, the truth is that most fans are not aspiring creators. So how talented or untalented someone is should not dominate the conversation among actual fans of that world. Same goes for their social views or political views. Sure, those conversations are expected to exist in the creator spaces on the fringe. And you want to be personable, but nerd culture is at its best when creators are ambassadors for the characters and their stories. It should be perfectly normal that there exist these superfans that are largely unfamiliar with the creator. Not too long ago, there was a stream about Marvel's Punisher and the Rippaverse's The Horseman on John's Longbox's channel. To drive the point, I must emphasize that he's explicitly stated that he's not a fan of Isom despite me being on his channel as a guest. But he hosted a fun stream where others got to come on and nerd out about the two characters. This is what it's about, fans having some good fun and nerding out. Back in the gap, you would have even these heated discussions and debates, but it was all just passionate fun. Once these types of conversations are happening far more often and they are far more widespread, that will be the indicator that the property or industry altogether is healthy. I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that people ignore who the creators are, especially after they have weaponized their personal views and bastardized characters because they were incapable of leaving it at the door. I'm saying that a lot of the tone is going to be set by the creators and the owners of those properties. We're going to have to remember that this is about the fans and it's not just art for art's sake. It's not about massaging the egos of creators or ensuring that they are worshipped by the fans. It's not about celebrity cabals or cliques, and it's especially not about gimmicks. As they say, leave the drama to the pages, because this game needs enthusiasm. The fans will give creators their flowers, but only after they've been provided with something worthwhile. Here at the Rippaverse, we're constantly trying to improve the fan experience, which will encourage them to nerd out. People have their day jobs and their real lives. The least that we can do is give them a fun sandbox where they're able to come together and just have some fun and escape. Thanks for watching. Be sure to head over to Rippaverse.com to check out our comic book company. We have books, plenty of merchandise, and even some glorious animations from Rippaverse Studios.